Isaiah chapter 66, one of the things that I'm actually done with my series on evangelism per se, but I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys tonight what I call my pre-proof Bible study. Just because I mentioned one of the great challenges for me has been to, how do you get this thing started? To sit down and to tell somebody, well, let's prove the Bible's the Word of God. And a lot of people say they believe the Bible's the Word of God, but they really don't when it comes down to it. They don't know that they don't, but they don't. And so I've had a challenge over the years of trying to figure out that opening study. And I encourage you guys, if there's one thing to get good at, there's one thing to put a lot of effort into, it's figuring out some opening spiritual conversations. And then this first study. Really, whatever variation you want to do off of it, but to be able to get somebody committed to look at truth. You know, Gunnar, I was here on Lord's Day, I think, must have been maybe after Peaks when you had the opening. And you brought up, he did a really great job, but one of the questions that he said, you know, what's true? And most people don't ask that question, is what I believe true? And that's what we're challenging people to ask that question. Is what I believe the truth? Isaiah 66, verses 1 and 2, just for our benefit here, we'll start off there. Thus says the Lord, heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where then is a house you could build for me, and where is a place that I may rest? Guys, God's not looking for a physical building. Doesn't need one. That's not going to be his resting place. But God does have an interest in dwelling somewhere, doesn't he? In this next verse, he said, for my hand made all these things, thus all these things came into being, declares the Lord, but to this one I will look, to him who is humble and contrite in spirit and who trembles at my word. This kind of person God's looking for. This kind of person that God wants to make his home within us. In this last line, somebody who trembles at my word. When we're working with people, we have to bring them to a conviction that the Bible is God's word and help them have that reverence for his word. Then when they see it, whatever God says, that's what we're going to go with in our lives. We tremble at his word. And so the challenge is bringing people to that point. And so tonight, I just want to work kind of on this. I've entitled this, Faith is More Than Just a Feeling. And so I like to start in Hebrews 11, verse 6, and just tell people, you know, according to the God of the Bible, according to the Bible, Hebrews 11, verse 6, without faith it's impossible to please him. He who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. So we got to have this thing called faith. I mentioned on Lord's Day, most people don't have a clue what faith is, but you know we're starting with that. What is faith? Most people's perception of faith, I think, really is kind of a blind leap. You know, is it a blind leap, or is it based on something solid? So I like to use this example. Nick brought this up last week, I think, that he had talked to somebody and they had never seen the Indiana Jones movies. I'm surprised how many people have seen this, but I like this example. Remember Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade when he's in search of the Holy Grail. And actually, if you guys want to go ahead and go to the next slide there, or actually I think maybe Bob's going to play this video. He pulled this up, so...
From the lion's head, you prove his worth. Impossible.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that, pulling that up. If you guys go ahead and, so Nick, over the years, I kind of got tired of explaining to everybody and reminding them, and so I just put the clip on there of that. So you can, if you're using this, you can click on that. It helps people. But the thing that always bothered me from the time I first watched this movie is, he goes through all this. He takes this leap of faith. There's something there. He walks across it. He goes through the other side, and then he decides to turn around and throw some dirt. It's like, now he knows it's there. You don't need to be able to see it anymore. Maybe throw some dirt in the first place, right? So, shouldn't have he tested first before he leapt is the question that I ask people. Now, I'm not saying we're going to be able to see the bridge all the way across. If it was, that's not faith. Okay, that's sight. But you can test and make sure there's something there. Okay? God wants us to test and make sure there's something there. So throw some dirt is what I'm challenging people. Let's check it out. I don't want you to be honest. Isn't it a pet peeve of yours of Christians when you say, well, how do you know that the Bible's true? Well, because the Bible says so. Let's go to 2 Peter chapter 1, or that doesn't prove anything. You can't start there. Any of you guys see the Ken Ham, Bill Nye debate on creation? It was kind of disappointing to me, actually. I mean, I thought, I'm going to assume that the rules of debate, Ken Ham got hemmed in a little on what the rules were. But along the way, is Ken Ham, his answer sounds, well, there's a book that says. You cannot start with an evolutionist and say, there's a book that says. Okay? You want to build to that point, to where now you can say, once you've proven this is true, now we can say, hey, there's a book that says whatever it says goes. But we got to help people get there. You can't ask anybody to start there. There's always a question of authority, and we're trying to help people, hey, throw some dirt, check it out. Ask the question, is what I believe true? So let's throw some of that dirt. God's definition of faith isn't a blind leap. It's based on solid proof. So another little example that I have is the World War II bomber, Lady Be Good. And she took off in North Africa to drop a payload of bombs over Naples, Italy, and never came home. Perished somewhere in the Sahara Desert. And, after the fact, they found it years later, actually. And I think the conclusion that they came to, there was a strong tailwind that night, and they think that the pilots didn't think they should be back yet. And so they assumed maybe somebody had jammed their controls, and they didn't trust, the bottom line is they didn't trust their instruments. They didn't trust what their instruments were telling them where they were. And so they actually flew past their base and ran out of fuel and crashed there. So I just want to go ahead and hit the next slide here. I want to make sure you guys are with me. You can't fly a plane by feel or by instinct. I've known a few pilots. I don't know if Scott's here. I saw Brian here somewhere. Oh, there you guys are. Craig was a pretty good pilot. And if you listen to him talk, he'd tell you he was a really good pilot. And he had instinct. He had feel. But remember, Scott, we went and saw him up there in Alaska? And there was a couple times the weather conditions there. He's not flying by feel. He's going to his instruments. Because the way it works, you can't tell at some point if you're upside down. You can't tell where you are. You get Kobe Bryant, was a big story this last year, right? And actually, Matthew and I studied just a couple times with a guy who's a captain pilot for Delta. And we just asking him a few questions, and maybe it was even here in our Bible study. But he said you can't do it both ways. Okay? You either have to be visual or you have to be instrument. And if the conditions are such that visual isn't going to work, you have to be fully instrument. There has to be something that you can go back to and you can trust. this is probably dating me a little bit, but any of you guys ever see any of the old Moody Bible Institute science videos? Some cool stuff, it's just old. You've seen them? Wow. So one time they had this illustration. They put this kid on this like spinny chair, and they put a blindfold on him, and they start spinning him. They say, hey, which direction I'm going? Okay, I'm going to my left. Okay. And then at some point they reach out and they stop it. Okay, they let it go for quite a while, and then they stop it and they say, which direction I'm going? I'm going to my right. I'm going to my right. Well, you're stopped. Okay. But the way the equilibrium with the fluid in your ear, it kind of levels out there after you've been going, and then when you stop it, it feels like you're going the other way. Guys, you can't go by feel. Our life, we can't live our life by feel. There has to be something that we can go back to, because sometimes in life, you don't know if you're upside down. You don't know which way's up, which way's down. You know, the roller coaster of life, don't you want to know what's going on? Somewhere there has to be something that we can trust, a source of truth. So that's what we're trying to help people, and I just let them know up front. I'm not going to ask you to believe this without checking it out. Okay? But if we can test it out, and if we can find there is a source of truth, okay, now we don't have to be dependent on our feelings and everything else. We can actually go back and have a place from which we can, an anchor, I guess, for our life, for our soul. Any questions, comments you guys got? Sean.
That's a great point, because for a pilot's license, it's one level. And then instrument training is a second level, and they actually have glasses or goggles that a pilot will put on. They fly you first like 4 or 5 times during the day and then at night. And the goggles actually block your view of anything above your instrument panel. You're not allowed to look, and your instructor will watch you. You have to watch your instruments only. You cannot look outside the windows at all. It's only your instruments, and if you pass that, then you're instrument trained, and that's a second level of pilot's license. So that's a great point.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, for that info. I'll use it, actually. And, you know, it's interesting, because in Montana, every year it seems like somebody dies from flying, playing in conditions they're not fully instrument trained or whatever. Conditions go bad, and spiritual death happens a lot when people flying by feel. So, anything else? Again, I want you to think about, you're starting with somebody who isn't a believer here. You're just laying a groundwork. We got to have something that's certain, that's sure, that we can come back to. How, what is that? And I just, up front, I appreciate what Jesus says. The wise man, the foolish man. You guys know the old Sunday school song. We won't spend our time here tonight going through that, but the wise man built his house on the rock. The foolish man built his house on the sand. And so, this one thing I've always noticed about that, Jesus doesn't say, hey, if you become a Christian, that nothing bad's ever going to happen to you. Jesus doesn't say if you become a Christian that it's going to be all smooth sailing. Jerry and I were talking just a little bit, and there are things I don't understand why. I don't understand why Peter has to go through what Peter has to go through. I have no answers for that as to why, except that people go through things like that from being here. Once sin entered into the world, death and sickness, and but various people go through those kinds of things. And so Jesus doesn't say if you become a Christian that the storms aren't going to come. Both the wise man and the foolish man, the storms of life come. And I'll encourage you, when you're sharing with people, here's a good time to ask them. Maybe share with them a storm or two that you've had and get them to open up and say, hey, you had any storms in your life? I've never had anybody tell me no that they haven't had any. And those are going to keep coming. But whether or not you withstand the storms depends on what? Your foundation. And so we're working here on that foundation. I keep thinking my clicker's moving that. Are you able to stand? And it really does depend on your foundation. Foundations aren't flashy, but they're the most important part of your house. So our house, when we first moved into it, was Smurf blue color. And Mikkel lived with us for a few years, and his going away present, he painted it in kind of a forest green, and I was thrilled to tell people about our new house color. Show people, hey, have you seen my house? Guys, whether it's Smurf blue or forest green, and now Mikkel did another fix, and it looks really nice now even. I mean, whole new siding and everything. It looks really great. But I have this crack in my foundation, though, of my house, right in the front, and we've had to re-slope it a little bit just to make sure the rainwater stays away because it was doing some indoor flooding. That's a lot more important than whether or not that thing's Smurf blue, forest green, or new siding. But nobody gets excited to, have you ever taken somebody in your house, hey, can I show you my foundation? Dan has, okay. There's a few guys that are like that. That's good. But it's a lot more important, isn't it? And what I try to share with people is, hey guys, this first part of the Bible study isn't necessarily going to be super flashy. It isn't even going to necessarily get super personal yet. Some people are scared of personal, but you're going to get there. Pretty soon you start talking about sin, that gets personal. But starting off, that's not where we're starting. We're starting not with the flashy stuff, but it's the important stuff that you got to get right, and that's the foundation. Any feedback from you guys on that? Okay, so the goal of our Bible study is to lay a solid foundation that's based on truth, so that the framework of our lives will stand not only for this life, but also for eternity. I'm just telling them this is where we're going with this. I think I mentioned in my series on evangelism that I have showed up for Bible studies, and a handful of times I've had people actually out loud tell me, I sure am glad you have a plan. Okay. Like, I think they were worried about what this was going to entail. But hey, you have a plan. All right, we're thankful for that. Okay, and we do have a plan. There's somewhere we're going. Okay. How do we know this is true? So I like Matthew 11, 28 through 30. We can turn there. Jesus hits people in a lot of different ways. There's lots of different personalities in this world, and we're all wired a little differently, and there's things that maybe we have particular interests in, things that hit our mind and heart differently than others. And Jesus was a master at really hitting all these different sides of this. And in Matthew 11, in verse 28, he says, come to me, all who are 11:28, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you shall find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my load is light. So basically, Jesus is saying, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, come see me. You guys know any people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired? I mean, oftentimes that's when people are actually ready to hear the truth. They've decided the elevator's gone to the bottom. They're ready for something better. And Jesus appeals to them, hey, come see me. You're tired out? Come see me and I'll give you rest. But I always find it a little bit of a paradoxical statement, take my yoke upon you. Does a yoke sound restful? It's not my first thought of a yoke. But Jesus is going to share the load, isn't he? I hit this a little bit differently. This life is it's a long haul. And any of you guys go on any backpacking trips for more than I do miss some things about like the old peaks where we actually had to hike up in there, and it was the good old days a little bit. And then guys started figuring out how to get their pickups even into those places, and we went from there. But when you gotta pack some stuff in, there's Julie and I have been studying with a couple, and they're into backpacking, and she actually was just telling us, we saw her packs. Man, these new packs are fancy. Wow. Expensive and fancy. But she was like, oh yeah, we should take this and we should take that. And then she started, after she's been out on one bag, she was like, how much does that weigh? Okay, now, not going to take that. Weight becomes an issue, okay, pretty quickly. And, one thing I really appreciate about Jesus is he is very upfront in what he tells you. There is a cost of discipleship. Okay? And so he says, take my yoke upon you. That's a little bit in contrast to the devil. I think about the devil offers you an empty backpack, and it feels good at first. Hey, yeah, I can carry this one, nothing in there. But every step you take, the little rock that goes in, another rock that goes in, that thing gets heavier and heavier and heavier as you go. The Lord offers you a pack, and it's got some weight to it. Take my yoke upon you. But everything that you need for that journey is in that pack. And the nature of it is you use some of the things, it gets lighter as you go, if you will. And so just trying to break through to people, Jesus is going to be up front. He's going to tell you. Okay? There's some things that there's going to be some challenges along the way of truth. You can hit it a bunch of different ways if you want to. Some of you, I don't remember the movie The Matrix very well. I know it's not something that I can suggest to everybody to watch. But I do remember red pill, blue pill, and I don't remember which is which. But I know if you take one of those colors of pills, does anybody remember? Which one's the truth pill? Huh? Take the red pill? That's the truth pill. So the blue pill is what? You forget everything. You can go back and just live your life the way everybody else is, spiritually stoned. Right? You have no idea what's going on, and you just put one foot in front of the other. Or you can take the red pill, and now you know the truth. And there's a cost to knowing the truth, isn't there? The truth, we say it, the truth sometimes hurts. But I'm appreciative about Jesus. He is upfront about that. And he said he's going to help you. You take his yoke. He's going to help you along. The devil's going to make it tougher. Another example that I found most non-Christians really easily identify with is cash versus credit cards. How are you going to pay? Remember when Julie and I first got our house? There was I think a 6-month for floor. We needed new flooring. The people that were in there before us had pets, and those pets they were not very well behaved pets. They were indoor pets, and they didn't know when to go outdoors. Okay, it was a very strong smell. And so one of the things that we actually put in is we said we need new flooring in this house. Like that's just one of the conditions. Well, we get to closing, and they hadn't done new flooring. And so we're like, well, and so the person there that was trying to negotiate and get the deal done says, well, actually, you're a lot better off if you just do the flooring yourself because it'll save you a lot of money over all these years of debt. That's true. Hard to argue with that. So, okay, we signed the deal. And then we went to Pierce Flooring, and I think it was a 6-month thing. No interest flooring. And so I had no idea what I was doing. Okay, 24, 25 years old. I mean, all I ever done with a credit card was put gas on it and paid it off every month. Okay, just built some credit that way, but I had no clue. I didn't read the fine print. So I told Julie, I was like, here we are. Hey, we're doing good. We'll just pay it. And whatever's left, there won't be hardly any left. And so whatever's left, the interest on that will be nothing, right? That's not the way that works, is it? Okay. That interest covers everything. It's accruing the whole time. So if you don't have it paid off, so we did figure that out, and I think we scrambled and got it paid off. But guys, that's the way the devil operates. Have whatever you want. Be your own God. You want it? Get it. Charge your credit card. What he doesn't tell you is the accruing interest. Okay? And there is accruing interest of sin, and people feel that in their lives. Okay? And so, again, Jesus is up front. He tells you, pay with cash. The devil says, here's a credit card, charge away. Okay? So, ones up front. The goal of our Bible study is to prove that God's Word is true so we can have confidence in Jesus. Again, I want to tell people from the beginning, because if this is true, Jesus is going to ask you to be a disciple. He's going to ask you to do some things that you don't want to do. And the only way you're going to do that is if you know it's real. When the chips are down, we all only do things if we know it's legit. And so, I just want people to know that up front. I think this is a really important point here. If something is true, it has to meet the demands of the mind as well as answer the questions of the heart. I think most people have heart questions. They're looking for heart answers. Hey, here's the Mormons. They come in, family, community. What are they doing? They're trying to give you a heart answer. But here's the challenge, and what I try to help people understand is, no matter what promises are made, if it can't pass the smell test of truth, there are no long-term answers for the heart, no matter what's being sold. And so we have to engage the mind from the beginning. Even if you're naturally wired a little bit more to be emotional, which, by the way, guys, our culture has been designed, it's been intentionally pushed and promoted and, what's the word I'm looking for? Programmed to be to be emotional, to make emotional decisions. I think, we could go a long ways back, but let's just go back to the drug culture of the 70s. When that came in, basically here's what came out. Just find the truth in your own mind. There's a reason that mega churches are so popular today. Because it is emotional appeal, and people walk in, they get a little spiritual high, and they walk out and they feel good. We have been conditioned to think that way, to respond that way emotionally without asking the question of truth. And so one of the things you're going to have to break into with people is tell them, just because somebody makes promises, those promises will not be fulfilled. They cannot be fulfilled if they can't pass the test of truth. Does that make sense? Anything anybody wants to chip in? I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about comments. Okay. All right. Isaiah 1:18, we know this. Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. One of the things I really am thankful for, and when I'm sharing with people, is the Bible itself says test it. Check it out. Let's think our way through this. Let's process through this reasonably. Engage your mind. I actually had a professor at MSU in chemical engineering. Super intelligent guy, and I actually liked a lot of his classes. He would work in a little bit of God-fearing stuff into his classes, very careful about it. But I remember talking with him, and it was interesting because he was Pentecostal. He went to, I want to say, the old Christian Center where I know Lori started school at. Assembly of God, Pentecostal outfit. And I was just talking to him, and I really could tell that he had his, in general, logical brain over here, and when he walked into the church building, he's checked his brains at the door. That was kind of the way he knew there were some logical things that made sense. There has to be a God, but then he just shut that off and went into religious mode, where it's just like, forget about your brain and let your emotions take over. That's not the way God works. I should have said this way back at the beginning. I like to ask people, who do you think, go back to Indiana Jones and taking this blind leap, who do you think is going to ask you, just trust me? Don't test it, just God or the devil? Because the devil's going to be the one that says, just trust me. Take that step. God's going to say, hey, test it. Check it out. Let's reason together. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, right? What's the Greek for word? Exactly, logos, right? Which means we get our word logic from it. It's in the beginning. Logic. God wants us to be logical, reasonable. In the Bible, the claim is the Bible is God's logical communication to us. I'm going to skip this one. Sometimes I use it. It's just basically, let's be real. Let's make sure we have something real that we're building on. So here's my favorite part that I like to get to. Truth's never afraid. You can bring anything to the table. I'm going to pick on the Mormons for just a second. How would you like to be one of those guys riding your bike in this heat with the shirt and tie? Oh, I mean, that's not really the issue. How would you like to be trying to peddle that and you hope you don't get certain questions asked? If I'm in those guys' shoes, I sure hope I don't meet anybody like me. I hope I don't meet anybody that's going to ask some tough questions. Isn't it great to be a Christian where no matter, hey, you can ask any question. Don't have to be afraid of that. So truth's never afraid. Truth doesn't fear examination. And let's go back to Isaiah chapter 41. And this is where I really want to spend a second with the non-Christian, the non-believer. Because I want him to be honest about this with me here. Right here is really the hinge of this, steady. And so I kind of explained the context of Isaiah a couple chapters before, a couple chapters after. He's basically telling the people of Judah, so you guys have all these idols. He says, let me get this right. You cut down this tree, and half of it you use for firewood, keep yourself warm, cook your food over it, and the other half you fashion into an idol and you fall down and worship it. Doesn't quite make sense. That's the context. And so in that context, Isaiah has a challenge for him. And I say, here's the challenge for us. That I want you to think about this challenge, and you tell me if you think this is a fair and reasonable and logical challenge. Isaiah chapter 41, verse 21 through 24. Sometimes actually, guys, at this point in my study, I'll read this out of NIV, because New King James, New American Standard, they're a little wordy. And NIV actually brings in the word idols. It's just a little easier to follow, so you can just put that in your mind if you want to for a non-believer, okay, just to make it a little bit simpler. We can read it here in New American Standard. Verse 21, Isaiah 41, present your case, the Lord says. Bring forward your strong arguments, the King of Jacob says. Let them bring forth and declare to us what's going to take place. As for the former events, declare what they were, that we may consider them and know their outcome. Or announce to us what's coming. Declare the things that are going to come afterward, that we may know that you are gods. Indeed, do good or evil, that we may anxiously look about us in fear together. And I'll stop there sometimes. So, the challenge is that anybody, and I'll say anyone, or any book that claims to be God or God's Word had better be able to do two things. Tell us past history and get it right, and tell the future and bring it about. Now let's stop here. The person you're working with, is this a fair challenge? Can human beings tell us past history and get it right? To a point. Is there ever any revisionist history that goes on? Sean's been to Belarus a few times. I think if you were to ask people, even go back and ask people of different parts of the world the history of World War II, you would get substantially different perspectives depending on what they've been taught concerning it. So human beings have a little bit of a difficult time even getting that right. How about the second half? Tell the future and make it happen. Human beings do that. You have to figure out what works for you on this, but for me, sometimes I'll just say most people are familiar with basketball, football, that kind of stuff. I'll just pick something. NBA. A few years ago, I was with my family. We were watching the NBA Finals. Golden State Warriors were up 3-1 in that best of 7 series. Whoever wins 4 games first wins. Golden State Warriors were up 3-1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. My boys were Cavaliers fans. I was a Golden State fan. I was feeling good. Matter of fact, nobody had ever come back from a 3-1 deficit in the NBA Finals. I was feeling good. If I was going to bet the house money, not that you should be out there gambling on this kind of stuff, but if I was going to bet the house money, I would have bet it on Golden State Warriors. Well, guess what? Golden State, Draymond Green gets kicked out of the game, suspended for anyways, don't go into the details. I didn't know. They lost. I don't know the future. Actually, this is how dumb I am. The last presidential election in the United States, I thought going into it Hillary was going to win. Now, I wasn't happy about that, but I thought Hillary was going to win. Throughout that whole day, I thought Hillary was going to win. I actually had a Bible study that evening, election day, and I come out of the Bible study, and one of the guys that was joining me, a fellow Christian, says, "Have you heard about what's going on in the election?" I was like, "No, what?" "Trump's winning." I'm like, "What?" Human beings, we can't predict the future and make it happen. But here's the question that you're asking people. Can an eternal God do that? He should be able to. He's not stuck in time. He can fast. If you want to think about it this way, he can rewind the tape, fast forward it, see the whole thing. So an eternal God can do this. So anybody that claims to be an eternal God should be able to do that. That's Isaiah's challenge. You guys that are idols, prove it. Catholic priests, we'll just say the Pope. Let's say the Pope. You claim that you're infallible in matters of faith and religion? I'd like to see some proof on that. Take your pick. Okay? The Philippines, Felix Manalo, the last messenger. Their recent version of Joseph Smith. Okay? Whatever. Okay? Prove it. But people fall for this stuff. Well, Philippines is Catholic number 1. Iglesia Ni Cristo, which is Felix Manalo outfit, number 2. People fall for stuff all the time. So you are challenging people. Is this true? You're doing 2 things at the same time. You're going to establish the authority of this, and in the meantime, you're destroying the false authority that they have built up in their mind, whether it be another religion or their own feelings. Because most people, they are their own God. So you got to break that down while you're establishing this. Does everybody think this is a logical, fair challenge? I've never had somebody tell me that they don't think it's a fair challenge. Usually the people that don't believe in absolute truth, we've already had some discussions before we ever get this far. But an eternal God should be able to do this. Recount past history, get it right, claim the future, make it happen. My watch is dead. Is that clock correct? 5 to 7 or so? Wow. Okay.
This one over here is correct.
Thank you. All right. All right. Wow. I got problems here. We might go all night. You guys let me know when we're done. Nick has a comment. Now we really might go all night.
Look, I was just curious. When we're going through this pre-proof with people, have you ever had the question, well, you're using the Bible to establish the parameters in the first place?
Yes. Yeah. And and I tell them, I say from the beginning, depending on where they're at, but I tell them from the beginning, I'm going to use the Bible, the concept here. But there's going to be a challenge we're going to get, and we're going to test everything. And so I say, I know this was written in the Bible, but I want to ask you, is this a fair challenge? Because really, this is the question I'm trying to. The rest of the stuff, I am using some words of Jesus, but that's not the test. This test from Isaiah, is that fair? Is it logical? I know it's in the Bible, but we're going to put the Bible to the same test. Is it reasonable? And I've never had somebody tell me it's not a reasonable test. An eternal God should be able to do this.
Do you know of anything in the other 3 books that is similar?
No. Matter of fact, this is kind of fun. actually. Because here's the thing. When you're a used car salesman, you know what's wrong with your car. You don't want somebody to ask you that. So you're going to try to, there's things you don't want. The rest of these guys, they're nothing like him. I do want to communicate that before I get out of here.
Just real quick, there's a branch of the Mormon Church called the Church of Christ Temple Lot, and I studied with a group of those folks one time, and I went through, this was a long time ago, like 15 years ago, and I went through the concept of proof that the Bible is the Word of God, and when I finally figured out, they accept the Book of Mormon, they don't accept any of the other books of Joseph Smith, and when I finally got to the point, figured out exactly what I was dealing with, they loved the proof book. They loved the proof. They loved going through the videos. They loved that, and so I just asked the question. I said, "Well, could we do the Book of Mormon? Could we put it to the same test?" And they were like, "There's no way we could do this with the Book of Mormon." And I said, "Well, then why do you believe it?" And they said, "Well, God revealed it to us that it's true." So, but it's really interesting. Straight up, they had no question. We wouldn't even try this.
That's a great point, and I'm gonna briefly touch on the Book of Mormon. But yeah, you actually ask a Mormon these kinds of questions, like the missionaries or anybody else, they're going to tell you, they're going to go back to Moroni chapter 3, I think, verse 10 or so. Read it, pray about it, and God's going to reveal it to you. You'll know it's true. So we'll say, well, shouldn't we ask some questions? Like, God's just going to reveal it to you. So, and I've had some guys give me some websites you can go to that they try to give their archaeological explanations, but they're worthless. And even the highest leaders of their organization really they don't at all want to make that the foundation of why you believe that book, because they can't. So, great point. 4 major books, guys. Can you name them? I ask people to do that. Bible, of course. Book of Mormon around here is a big one. The Vedas, the Hindus. It's part of their sacred writings, and the Quran, right? So, let's apply the test, each one of these. Let's check it out. I don't have time, but I want to hit a couple things really quick. Vedas, let's just ask the question. Hey, I started reading, I don't have time for these stories. I started reading Bhagavad Gita one time. Guys, please. Mythological poetry, not fun. Okay? I mean, I had a hard time in English literature when they said, what does the poet mean? And I'm like, well, no, that's wrong. The poet means, how do you know? I don't know. My guess is, But anyways, you get into mythological poetry and ask me to figure out what truth is. Give me a break. So, but one of the claims in the Vedas is, in their sacred writings, is that the world rides on the back of a giant tortoise called Akupara. Maybe you've seen this picture. Sometimes you'll see some of the Hindu stuff, okay? And I just say, guys, I mean, sorry, I keep thinking my clicker's up there. The picture of the world that's not riding on the back of a giant turtle, okay? So, mythology fails the test of getting past history right. You know what I'm going to do with that book? I don't have to read any more mythological poetry. Okay? I'm going to crumple that thing up and throw it in the trash can. I don't have to go any further than that. Okay? You can say there's all sorts of good morality or whatever. Who defines that? If it's not true, I'm not interested. Let's go bowling. I mean, if it's not true, forget it, right? Instead of sweating up here, let's go to the pool or something. Okay, Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon claims another testament of Jesus Christ for the peoples of the Americas. I don't have time to get into the back history of this. Hopefully you guys know a little bit. I just ask a few questions. Hey, the American continents have been relatively heavily populated or lightly populated throughout the centuries. Until the last few centuries, it's been very lightly populated. There ought to be some archaeological finds that would support the supposed history of the Book of Mormon. Who are the Lamanites? Who are the Nephites? Who in the world are those guys? Never heard of them. And, well, I don't have time. So, and actually it's interesting because supposedly they have a museum in New York State, and where there was this huge battle that was fought, according to the Book of Mormon. 1 million people died. They talk about like swords and spears and all this kind of stuff. For some reason, the Mormons won't allow any archaeological digs on that hillside. Wonder why that would be. Correct. Okay. Yeah, I can't even remember the pronunciation, but that's right. When you said it, rings, that's right. But there's no archaeological digs. They got a little museum in there. Why won't they? Because they know. Maybe they've done a few in the dark. But they know nothing's there. Okay? They're afraid of truth. So again, you can throw this one away. Okay. By the way, Nick, I should say, in the Book of Mormon, it's messing me up. Joseph, what time is it? 7:59. In the Book of Mormon, if you actually read that Book of Mormon, there are amazing prophecies. I mean, they'll tell you Jesus is going to have 12 apostles. They're going to tell you one of them's named John, and he's going to talk about the last days. And supposedly this is like 600 BC. I mean, amazing prophecies. He asks, why should I believe this was written at this point in time? I mean, Joseph Smith didn't even claim to find the golden plates till, what, early 1820s? So, you're telling me this was written 600 BC. Why should I believe that? So the claims are there, but it's a bunch of baloney. And they can't even get the first part of the test right. You know, you can go into it a bunch of different ways. I just primarily... There is a secondary way with the Mormons, if they're really into this, that what Phil was talking about. The way it's set up, you got Old Testament, New Testament, another testament of Jesus Christ. If there's discrepancy between, I mean, the Old says there's a new coming, right? But the New guy says this is it. It says it's the eternal covenant. It's the perfect one. So where's room for another testament of Jesus Christ? And isn't a testament inaugurated by blood? So how do we get another testament of Jesus? Did he die again? I mean, there's just a bunch of ways you can hit that. But I just like, for this purpose, and this part of it, throw it away after they can't even get past history right. Quran's a little more interesting, is a way of saying it. The best way I can explain it, guys, is, you know how when you read the book of Psalms, it'll refer back to some history from Exodus or whatever. The best way I can explain the Quran is the book of Psalms without any history. You're reading along and they'll say something about Saul and the 300 guys. I think they got messed up between Gideon and Saul. Okay, but they'll have things like that they're thrown in, but there's no historical base whatsoever. I got to Bible say one night this gal from the Ukraine was a Muslim, and that's what she was raised. But she was majoring in world history, and I just started talking to her, and she's like, "Yeah, it's like I can't believe it. There's no history at all for it, absolutely none. There's no historical basis for the book. So it's kind of like, okay, in the Quran is set up this way. You can't apply the test to it. There's no history to test, and there's no prophecies in there. It's just like this. Somebody said one time, it's like the weird ramblings of a madman. And that's, when you read it, that's kind of what it's like, where's this at? It's just stuck here, like spots on the wall that are thrown up there. So there's no prophecies to be able to test. No historical base, no prophecies. It completely fails the second part of the test. That leads us to the Bible. We all know, and I just share with people, hey, this written by 40 writers over a period of about 1,500 years. The next series of our studies are going to be putting this book to the same test. How does it do in terms of past history? How does it do with science, archaeology, etc.? And even more importantly, how does it do with prophecy? Does it tell us the future and make it happen ahead of time? It's worth checking out. Because if there is a God, then he's going to find a way to reveal himself to us, and his signature is going to be on every page of his book. It's going to be signed by him. And so we want to figure this out. If it's not true, guys, I don't want to waste anybody's time. Why are we doing this if it's not true? So let's check it out. It's worth the test. And then I usually kind of wrap this up, Isaiah 66, where we started tonight. Lots of times I don't get through this. It takes me a couple weeks to get through this study. I will say this. When I get done, though, like going through, then kind of shifting into proof that the Bible is the Word of God. Actually, Bob, maybe if you want to put up that very last slide for me. So this is where we're going to go. And you guys are familiar with Proof the Bible is the Word of God booklet. That's where we're going next. By the time you get through external considerations and you look at, the archaeology and the science, and when you then get into the historical prophecies and you get through the messianic prophecies and you go through the plan, at some point I go back to Isaiah 41. I say, remember where we started here. Hey, truth doesn't fear examination. Present your case. Let's put it out there. Test this and let's see. And I say, you know what happened here? We started out by testing this. You know what God just did? Somewhere in there, the test got turned to me because you've seen it. Now you explained to me Isaiah 53 and how it's there. Great Isaiah scroll, the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is fun stuff. God's made his case. God's made his case, and we have confidence. And it's nice to be in a position you can go, you can share with people, you can challenge from the beginning. Any question's fair. Truth's never afraid. If I don't know the answer, we'll figure it out. And I love people that are skeptical, because aren't you tired of being lied to every direction? You see why people are skeptical. I'm just going to ask, let's be equally skeptical to everything. Let's be fair about it. Across the board, let's test it, check it out. So, any final questions, comments? Dan.
I just have one really quick comment. The climate of the world right now is, the world's on fire. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, but the world is on fire, and there is going to be a major cleanup crew that needs to happen once the fire dies down, and it will die down. We'll either be under a despotism or we'll be freer than we used to be. There's only two ways this is going to play out. Either way, we need to be ready to be able to answer the questions that people are going to have, and they will have those questions.
Yeah, and I'd say those questions are right now. Let's just talk about real stuff with people. Let's talk about, what is it, Isaiah 59? Truth is stumbled in the street. Guys, that's our world. So we can come back, we can ask people, hey, is what you believe true? How do you know? Let's talk about it. Let's have real talk. Can we figure this out? Because anybody that's a truth seeker, they're tired of being lied to. They want what's real. I remember Buddy Russ of mine, wild kid. Absolutely insanely wild guy. Rough background. 18 years old. Started coming to church with a gal. And somewhere in there we started Bible study. Sure. They broke up. He quit. And then later, he's like, I want to do this for me. So we got to Bible study, and he'd been going to Faith Chapel some, and before he had ever come into ours, I said, Faith Chapel's more entertaining. It's like, he's like, this place is a lot more entertaining. He's like, I want something that's real. And that's what he was looking for. This guy actually became a Christian, died in a motorcycle wreck, 20 years old. Flying down, he was sober, thankful for that. Flying down 24th Street in Billings. But this guy, and that is our world. People are looking for something and somebody that will tell them the truth. Guys, we have it. We got a message the whole world needs to hear. Not everybody's looking for it. We're looking for the people that are. So have fun with it.